On April 14, 1912, the North Atlantic is eerie and still. The sky is completely clear, the sea resembles a sheet of glass, and the stars shine with enough intensity that sailors can read their watches outside in the dark. From the crow's nest, lookout Frederick Fleet has a view that appears to stretch for miles. He scans the horizon for hours, seeing nothing but the flat, reflective surface of the water. At 11:40 p.m., a massive dark mass suddenly occupies the space directly ahead. The crew is left with a 37-second warning before 10 seconds of grinding metal against ice. Within 3 hours, the most advanced ship in the world has vanished, and 1,500 people are dead. For over a century, we have looked for someone to blame. We point to Captain Smith's speed, a shortage of lifeboats, or the missing binoculars. The Titanic was trapped in a dual illusion, a psychological belief in total invincibility, masking a rare atmospheric distortion that rendered the ice invisible. The Titanic was a $32 million project designed to project human dominance over the environment. Its stained glass, heated pools, and Turkish baths provided a luxury that distanced the crew and passengers from the reality of the North Atlantic. This sense of safety was built into the hull itself. It featured a double-bottom construction, using 2 separate layers of steel to protect against underwater obstacles. The most significant feature was the division into 16 watertight compartments. Engineering models showed the ship would remain buoyant even if the first 4 flooded completely. This threshold gave the White Star Line the confidence to market it as unsinkable. That confidence made small logistical errors seem manageable. During a last-minute crew shuffle under Captain Smith, an outgoing officer accidentally kept the key to the locker holding the lookout's binoculars. The Titanic left port without those binoculars. On a ship engineered to survive its own worst-case scenarios, this logistical oversight appeared negligible. The crew's reliance on the 16 compartments turned a critical tool into a low-priority risk. Even with binoculars in hand, Frederick Fleet would have seen the same empty horizon. The weather conditions on April 14th were specifically aligned to defeat human optics. Despite the clear air, the lookouts reported a strange haze sitting directly on the horizon line. This was a thermal inversion. Freezing air remained trapped against the calm water beneath warmer air. This created an atmospheric lens. Light rays refracted, bending downward. This lifted the ocean's appearance, creating a false horizon that sat higher, forming a band of visual distortion. The iceberg was positioned exactly within this band of displaced light. Its dark mass was camouflaged against the dark ocean water being reflected from behind it. The atmosphere obscured the massive object until the ship was nearly on top of it. This refraction rendered the lookout's sightlines effectively useless against the distortion field. At the 37-second mark, the 2 illusions met. The crew's psychological confidence in their engineering collided with an atmospheric reality they could not see. The Titanic's internal logic was built on the certainty of its 16 watertight compartments, but the ocean operated on the deceptive laws of physics. By 2:20 a.m., the ship had broken apart and disappeared. The survivors were left in a few wooden lifeboats, drifting in the same calm, deceptive waters that had hidden the ice. The steel and rivets of the hull performed according to their mathematical design. The disaster originated where that internal engineering logic met an atmospheric reality it was never built to account for. We build complex systems to insulate ourselves from nature, but the Titanic proves that human certainty remains vulnerable. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, it can still be defeated by the quiet, unseen forces of the natural world. On April 14th, lookout Frederick Fleet climbed into the Titanic's crow's nest to scan a freezing, dark ocean, using nothing but his naked eyes. A misplaced key had left the ship's binoculars locked away, a detail that has defined the disaster's history for over a century. During the official inquiries, Fleet testified that if he had just been able to use those binoculars, he would have spotted the iceberg in time to save the ship. For decades, inquiry boards and the public accepted this as a primary cause of the tragedy. However, atmospheric physics shows that binoculars would have offered no advantage that night. An extreme atmospheric phenomenon rendered the iceberg invisible, regardless of optics available to the crew. Captain Edward Smith had received 7 different ice warnings from other ships throughout the day, yet he remained confident in the ship's safety. White Star Line chairman Bruce Ismay was also pushing for a high-speed arrival in New York, keeping the Titanic at over 22 knots despite the risk of ice. Under the standard protocol of 1912, a clear, calm night was considered the ideal condition for spotting ice from miles away and steering around it. The crew believed they were sailing through perfect conditions, unaware that the very clarity of the night left them vulnerable to a specific atmospheric trap. The formation of this trap began at sunset as the air temperature began to drop rapidly. The Titanic was crossing from the warm Gulf Stream directly into the freezing Labrador Current. The water surface temperature sat at -2 degrees Celsius, while the air just 200 feet above was a much warmer 6 degrees. This coincided with a barometric pressure of 1,039 millibars, a near record high for the Northern Hemisphere. This rare intersection of freezing water, warm air, and extreme pressure created a thermal inversion. In a typical desert mirage, heat radiating from the ground bends light beams upward toward the eye, creating the illusion of water on the road. The thermal inversion over the North Atlantic bent light downward, curving it along the surface of the Earth. This effect, known as a superior mirage, causes the horizon to appear much higher in the sky than its actual position. The gap between the true and false horizons creates a band of haze where scattered light distorts and obscures objects behind it. A 1.5 million ton iceberg vanished into this distorted light, effectively disappearing from view. Fleet was staring into a wall of distorted air where the horizon should have been, a phenomenon that binoculars would have only magnified. The crystal-clear conditions that made the crew feel safe were the exact variables required to create this visual barrier. At exactly 11:39 p.m., the massive iceberg suddenly breached the mirage at incredibly close range, appearing almost instantaneously out of the dark, distorted haze. First Officer William Murdoch had 37 seconds to reverse the engines and turn the ship hard to port. As the bow began to swing, the visible peak of the iceberg appeared to clear the front of the ship, but an underwater shelf of ice scraped against the hull for 10 terrifying seconds, completely out of sight beneath the surface. Modern 3D scans show the damage was a series of small, sequential puncture marks that popped the ship's rivets like a zipper. This specific pattern of damage was exactly what was needed to bypass the double hull and breach the watertight compartments. Designer Thomas Andrews inspected the damage and began calculating the ship's survival time. The Titanic could survive 4 flooded compartments. The iceberg had breached 6. As the bow tilted forward, water began spilling over the top of the bulkheads from one compartment into the next, mimicking an ice cube tray filling with water. Andrews informed Captain Smith with mathematical certainty that the ship would sink within 2 hours. The physics of the atmosphere turned a clear night into an inescapable trap, a factor more decisive than any missing key or pair of binoculars. The Titanic was so massive, and the initial impact of the iceberg felt so gentle, that passengers joked about arriving in New York early. Below the deck, the reality was much different, as 15,000 tons of freezing seawater began tearing into the ship's lower compartments. Chief Engineer Joseph Bell and his staff of 35 men realized immediately that the rising water had trapped them in the engine rooms. While first-class passengers drank champagne and the band played upstairs, the engineers were already struggling to keep the ship's systems alive. The engineering staff chose to stay at their posts. They kept the massive boilers pressurized and the emergency generators running, even as the water reached their feet. This sacrifice provided the electricity needed for wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride to send a continuous stream of distress signals. It also kept the ship's deck lights burning and powered the massive distress rockets that the crew fired into the night sky. Roughly 10 miles away, Captain Stanley Lord of the SS Californian could physically see these lights and rockets. The engineers were giving their lives to generate signals for a rescue ship that was well within visual range, yet the Californian never moved to help. A layer of freezing air was sitting heavily over the icy water of the North Atlantic that night. This temperature difference created a dense thermal gradient, a layer of atmosphere that functioned like a giant natural lens. This shows how the thermal lens bends light. Instead of traveling straight, light rays curve downward through the cold air. This artificially raises the visual horizon line, completely warping spatial relationships between objects on the water. Through this distorting atmosphere, the 800-foot Titanic appeared optically squashed. To the Californian, it looked like a tiny freighter sitting much closer than it actually was. The powerful distress rockets were also warped by the hazy air, appearing to Captain Lord as weak, faint flashes. Lord interpreted these signals as a small ship having a minor mechanical issue, rather than a massive vessel in a state of emergency. He decided it wasn't worth the risk of navigating through a dangerous ice field for what looked like a non-emergency. The physics of the night effectively neutralized the engineer's sacrifice, turning their desperate signals into glitches that the Californians simply ignored. On the Titanic's deck, the crew struggled with the logistical reality of having only 20 lifeboats for over 2,200 people. Officers Murdoch and Lightoller gave conflicting orders for the lifeboats. Murdoch allowed men on to keep families together, while Lightoller enforced a rule that literally tore teenage boys away from their mothers. This chart shows the wasted capacity of the early launches. Many passengers refused to leave the brightly lit ship for the dark ocean, meaning boats designed for 65 people were lowered with as few as 27 inside. At 2:20 a.m., the lights failed as the ship split in two, with the stern rising high into the air before its final plunge. Every engineer died in the ensuing darkness, yet their work provided the only chance for survivors to reach the launched boats. Modern 3D scans of the wreckage reveal the forensic reality of that night. While the bow reached the floor relatively intact, the stern section was completely destroyed. The stern corkscrewed down at 80 kilometers per hour and smashed into the ocean floor with such force that its decks collapsed onto each other. Metal-eating bacteria are now consuming what is left, and scientists estimate the entire structure could dissolve by the year 2030. This disaster was driven by a rare atmospheric phenomenon that neutralized every safety measure the engineers fought to maintain. The Titanic reminds us that our technology functions within the rules of the environment it inhabits. When a simple trick of light can override our best tools, even the most advanced systems become vulnerable. Let me know in the comments, does Captain Lord deserve the blame for his inaction, or was he just as trapped by the mirage as the Titanic?